I am joined, there we are. I am joined with Koffi Kouakou, an added to the stage. He is a senior research fellow at the Center for Africa-China Studies in the University of Johannesburg. Kofi, welcome to the show,
Yes.
man. How you doing
No,
today? You doing
thank
all
you.
right?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Oh, man,
I was
thank you.
just, I was just listening to you, and I just thought about, Russian roulette. These guys are playing Russian roulette, aren't they?
With the
And we know
world,
who's going to win.
with the world. I mean, like, under Joe Biden, and Kamala Harris could have won, by the way. They would have kept going. They would have kept plugging away at a losing campaign. And look, I would tell
Yeah.
you, in chess, trying to win a lost game is a loss. Trying to win a drawn game is a loss. Meaning you were losing. It was clear that you were losing. And nobody would come to any kind of honest assessment of, all right, let's cut bait. We need to stop this. We're bringing ourselves to at odds with two nuclear powers. This is not where we need to be as the United States. I am
Yeah.
not a fan of Trump. I didn't vote for Trump. But if he ends the war, thank God.
Yeah.
That's how I feel. How you doing?
Totally
You doing
agree
okay
with you.
today?
We're doing okay. The sun is really shining nicely here in Pretoria, but I can see the rain coming up later at night, and we've been blessed with great rain. We're happy.
Very cool. So I contacted you because I think we don't get enough um, subjects that are Africa related, and I think Africa is going to be a power coming up in the new world and the way that the world functions, especially if they start working together in tandem with each other, using their own resources, those type of things. And so I do think they're going to take more prominence in the world. And so my thought was, I need somebody to discuss this stuff, and you are fantastic at doing so.
Thank
Um,
you.
One of the interesting things that I've noticed and that you pointed out was that ECOWAS was trying to make amends with the Sahel states that broke away from that same ECOWAS, and that at one point ECOWAS was threatening on behalf of France. Just astonishing. It's like we're going to get black people to go after other black people. Um, what is going on with this? And are those overtures going to be accepted?
Look, they've been trying as hard as they can, especially the other 12 or 14th of the left in this deal members, but they're just failing. And I think when you look at the data points and the reality on the ground, it's a worthless exercise to try to bring these three countries back. And clearly, it's even becoming delusional, where you have so many people being sent. First of all, I know it's a tough word for me to say, but you have the young president of Senegal, Diomaye Faye, and then you also have the president of Togo, Eyadema. These two are trying their best. And more recently, the new president of Ghana, John Mahama, who was elected last year, he just took over now. He started on January the 7th of this year. And about, let's say, 22 days down the line, those three countries officially ceased to be members of the community,
Yeah.
the ECOWAS, Economic Commission for West African States, and there is no really value proposition that these countries will accept readily, because it, any value they're going to bring is not going to make sense at this stage, because those three countries know that they were threatened by ECOWAS, backed by France, but also NATO in the background,
Right.
and all these European countries, because they were losing out on the wealth that they've been siphoning off from these three countries. And these three countries, you take the two giant, Mali, it's about 1 point something million square kilometers. You take Niger, it's also the big 1 point something million. Chad is also big, these are three huge countries. Of course, part of the country is a desert. But what is extraordinary, and I must say this, I found out, and most recently, and I didn't make the connection, but the connection was already made by an analyst, a French analyst, by the way, saying that apparently the combined gold reserve of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger is much larger than the gold reserve sitting in Fort Knox in the United States. That's astounding. And so when Muhammad goes there and trying to convince them to come back, there's very little value proposition for them to go back and meet what? They're now trying to create a monetary union. They're going to come out with their own currencies. Apparently, it's going to be called the Sahel. It hasn't been completely officialized. But if this Sahel comes up as a currency, it's going to be backed by gold. And as you already know, the history of Mali and that region, the Malian Empire under the great Kanka Musa, the emperor was there, who went to Mecca with tons of gold and who crashed the gold market for decades there. Apparently, the gold that's in that region really hasn't been exploited enough. They're finding more golds. In fact, the recent research that came out in the whole West Africa, running from Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso, Mauritania, Senegal, and then a larger part of the southern part of Algeria, is full of gold. And this is not just gold that you have to dig very deep, but it's sort of superficial gold, so it makes it easier. And so this region is going to be another scramble. It's going to be target for another scramble. But coming back to Ghana and then ECOWAS and then of course Mali, Burkina Faso, I think President Mahamat went on a really frivolous trip. He spent taxpayers' money for nothing. I think the young president of Burkina Faso, 36 years old, very quiet and respectful, who attended the inauguration of President Mahama of Ghana with his pistol charged right on his right hand side, saying, wait a minute, you come after me, I'm going to deal with you. In any case, it was polite to receive him with, courtesy and all this decorum and so forth. But so he came out empty handed. And he's
Yeah.
now going to be writing another report to the ECOWAS leader telling them, look, there may be hope, but so and so. So that is the point of it. And these three countries are steaming ahead. They're doing extraordinary things. Of course, they're still struggling with, managing efficiently the territories because of terrorists, but also the geographic size of these countries is huge.
Mm-hmm.
But we understand Russia is helping. China is also helping. And there was some kind of rumor that Iran, but also North Korea, were also trying to help. Yes, very interesting development. The Chinese are there. It's a place, West Africa, people are not talking much about it, but things are really happening. In Guinea, they're now almost about to open a railroad that's going to, of course, siphon off, iron ore right up from what's a mountain called Futa Jalon. Very, very interesting issue. It's still about what is called, there are two ways to call it, resource nationalism. That's the old way, which means, you make sure that the resources of your country serves you. A little bit like a bit of a MAGA light, but on resources. Or it's also called resource sovereignty. That's the new words that are now being used.
So ECOWAS is a no. And I don't blame them, right? At the point where you're saying if you leave, you're going to get military attacked by France, it's kind of hard to come back from that. Like you're threatening to kill us if we leave. Yeah. And now you're like, hey, I know we threatened to kill you at one point. We were just joking. We would love to have you back. It's like, dude, stop. It's like, stop. You've lost us. Now it becomes the relationship that they can have with ECOWAS, because they still are there geographically. They still have to engage and interact with these countries.
They do interact. There's no really, they've managed to, the Sahelian state, those three states, based on their alliance, the document of their alliance are very clear. Anybody from ECOWAS can still enter their country without having a visa or whatever it is. So they're making it attractive for other countries also to dissolve from ECOWAS. But you remind me, what you just said now remind me of an abusive husband, So in this case, it's ECOWAS. He beats his wife or his two wives or three wives. And then they said, wait a minute, we can't take this anymore. We're just going to have a coalition. We're going to be on our own. So if you come and try to beat us, we're going to defend ourselves. But we're not going back. But the abusive husband said, no, I want you to come back. This is where we are.
Yeah.
And he ain't going to happen.
Yeah, beach.
That's right.
That's why
Yes,
they do it.
I know.
I'm curious. So you told me the last time that you were here that they paid off their loans, and
Yes,
it was fascinating that they were able to do that, considering the previous governments couldn't do it.
yeah.
Like at some point, now that they paid off the loans, what are they able to do with the increase? I would imagine money that they have at their disposal. They're not paying interest. They're not paying any of these things. So what have they decided to use the resources that they've been able to,
Oh my
I guess you could
goodness. I
say,
mean, this is
unleash for?
yeah, this is another side. I mean, this is where most of these democracies, at least the leaders who came through what's called democratic ballots, really were disappointing that they couldn't manage, and it's going right through across the whole Africa. Well, not just Africa, but even in the United States.
Yeah.
Doge is now telling us that, my goodness, um, you know, uh, um, misplaced money or fruitful expenditure is the goal of the game in most countries.
Yes.
And it was worse in Mali, and it's still worse in many of these countries. I mean, the debt of Cote d'Ivoire is just outrageous, as much as the country is growing at 6 or 7%, but the debt is just huge. So they have to pay, pay, and pay. But what is interesting between Mali and Burkina Faso is that now they're getting a bit of cash. They have hard money, not just talking of paper money or fiat that they can just borrow or at very expensive interest rate with loan sharks of the World Bank and the IMF and
Right.
the Club of Paris and London and so forth. And this is what's really pissing off most of these donors or these funders, because they can't get a hold of these people anymore. So the leftover money they have, I mean, they have so many social issues that they must deal with. Extreme poverty, unemployment's rising among the youth, inequalities where wealthy people have so much that the others don't have much. Also, the infrastructure, Jamal, and they need to build. So the president is using that money, especially for agriculture in Burkina Faso.
Mhm.
This year, he bought about 400 and more tractors for agriculture. He managed to build a refinery for gold. They produced last month, I think, or this month, their fresh new gold bars produced in Burkina Faso. This is almost unbelievable, unknown of. And Mali's doing the same thing, and they have social programs that they're dealing with to put women and the youth into play to do some work for the country, but also the education, because most of these countries have sort of subsidized education, so you don't have to pay to go to school. And
Yeah.
they're looking at all these issues, and that's where the money is going to basically go. And
That's
it is
fantastic.
clear that these military guys are serious. In fact, they've been now, not court-martialing people, but the justice system is getting so tough that corrupt leaders are now knowing what they face if they stole the money.
Oh, they see it coming. I see. Let's
Yeah.
get to South Africa for a bit. I'm fascinated by this. And I guess part of my fascination is that Elon Musk, white South African, moved to the US. He's not American. I guess he is, but he's not. And I'm saying this to be brutal intentionally. I've met 2 or 3 South Africans, white South Africans. One of them didn't seem to like the fact that apartheid ended. Like he just openly just didn't seem to like it, and thought that the country was worse off because apartheid ended. Now, I found this to be an astonishing point of view, but that was his point of view, right? Elon Musk, I don't know what is in his mind. The Hitler salute was problematic to me, especially considering South African and the tenor that Trump has taken on South Africa. I know Trump knows nothing about South Africa. So the fact that he's taking that tenor, I'm assuming it comes out of Musk, not Trump as an individual on his own. I'm assuming that Trump is a stalking horse for what Musk thinks on South Africa. And the policy that Donald Trump is going through with South Africa is coming out of Musk, not Trump. So that's why I'm fascinated by this, because I don't think Trump would be doing this if Musk wasn't in the picture. Give me your take on that. That there's a white South African whispering sweet nothings into the president's ear that is influencing the relationship between the United States and South Africa on policy that is specific and a sovereignty issue for South Africa. Give me your take on this.
Look, I'm glad that you've identified and isolated Elon Musk. He's not the only one. I mean, if you took David Sachs, even Peter Thiel, through the vice president, so there's a large network around the president who managed to really capture it nicely. And this is something that very few people ever thought would happen, that a group of white South Africans, well off, will be able to start to sort of sneakingly, move into power in the United States and decide policy and change the world of Americans and of the world. And it's now happened. He's not the only one. The grandson of Pete Botha, called Roloff Botha, who's also a connection to what they call the PayPal mafia, but as well as Elon Musk and David Sachs and so forth. That grandson, quite smart guy, but of course, there's this sort of resentment about having been white or being white in South Africa for having lost power, that sort of racial part of it, and finding that it's very difficult to recapture it or to be treated or called as boss. Here they say boss, it is a true psychological nightmare for many of them. And some of them come on TV, on radio, and they say it. So a little bit like in the US in the old days, or even today, where the language in the old days was, to use your term, very brutal, rough, uncouth, direct, straightforward. Now it's couched into all kinds of things like DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. We don't want that. Or here in South Africa, they'll call it triple BE, which is Black, economic empowerment issues, where they're trying to redress the situation. But this kind of thing was hijacked by a whole bunch of other people, Black people themselves, take advantage of it. So it didn't work well. It hasn't worked well for the majority of people. This is exactly where we're facing these things. But to come back to your point, is that Elon Musk, frankly, what does he have to prove now? He's going to Mars. He's sending, you see what I mean? He's sending all kinds of things. So he just loves to be there in the White House with his kid or kids, whatever it is. And these are pictures that will be there for posterity. So he's taking advantage of it. And there are a lot of talks that he may not last. It could be possible, because when things start to get tough, and you've seen him and the President Trump have been saying, look, it looks like people are trying to break us apart. They're trying to create some kind of tension between us. And they know that's going to happen. And I don't think Elon Musk is going to be there for a long time. If he's smart enough, he'll do his Doge stuff and then just pack his bags and go take care of Tesla, who is now under threat because people are now, I'm sure you've seen the boycott. People are burning Tesla cars. They're attacking them. And him himself have said, on Joe Rogan's show, that he's worried about his own life and security. Because if he's really successful at Doge, he will be dead. That's an astounding statement to make.
So I don't know if he'll be dead, but I do agree with you that a bad look adversely affects his business. Like if people are looking at you a particular way and say, okay, this guy's a Nazi, this guy's a Trumper, this guy's a whatever, it damages your ability to do business in the U.S. So on that part, I definitely agree with you. What is happening in South Africa in regards to this relationship? Because you pointed out that this was big news in South Africa, or what is taking place between the U.S. and...
Well, the big news, the big hot news now here is the persona non grata signal sent to the ambassador of South Africa, Ibrahim Rasool, in Washington, D.C., to pack his bag last Friday and leave in 48 hours somewhere on Monday, which has happened already. Now, there was a seminar I attended online myself by a think tank, very reputable think tank, and they were looking at what are the implications of the new, Trump administration? What does that mean for South Africa? In the view of all these, the attack on the Expropriation Act by President Trump, and then also the unhappiness from Elon Musk about his Starlink fiasco for not being able to make it in South Africa because of the triple BEE, or what's called the quota-based, company type of arrangement, has now
Now,
culminated
wait, you're going to have
into
to
this.
explain
So,
that to
yeah,
an American audience may not know what that is. Explain what that
yeah.
is.
So you have, by law, anybody who is investing in South Africa has to relinquish 30% of the company, the sort of shares of the company, to a local business. I mean, this happened in China, it happens in Malaysia, it happens in other places. But you got to, if you were Jamal coming to South Africa and you wanted to invest a large sum of something, you will have a local partner who will have 30% of it.
And Musk didn't want to
And
do that.
Musk didn't want to do that because he thought this was racially based. It gave money to black people for free, and he didn't like that. And so they were they were tug of war with the government, and then so he decided not to bring his Starlink. But they're still in negotiation. They're trying to figure out what's the best way to get it right.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
And so the U.S. is in
but
a pissing match with South Africa over South African law.
yeah,
And South
but you
African
can
law
see that. Yeah,
is similar to
South
what the
African
U.S.
law.
tried to do, by the way.
Yeah, it's
When,
the law.
yeah,
So
when
it's like
slavery,
in the U.S. Yeah, with slavery in the U.S. If South Africa were to say today, if there were a form of slavery in the U.S. and South Africa were to say, wait a minute, we don't like your slavery thing. We're not going there. We're not going to invest there. It's an injection, and then sort of injecting yourself in these kind of
right,
local realities. It's not
right.
an easy thing, but the Trump administration, not that it doesn't seem to know it. You'll be surprised. I'm sure Trump is well briefed, especially in Florida and Mar-a-Lago. There are a lot of South Africans living there. But one of the things, in fact, two things that I think is motivating their strategy, as I told you, I was writing a confidential memo. Two things really important. I think the whole issue of South Africa having taken Israel on the ICJ genocide is just this is the biggest deal there. And there's a sort of revenge. It's that hand is
Good
not
point.
visible because it's working by proxy.
Oh, good
And
point.
largely it's a big thing. And the revenge is gonna come. Many of us will watch this and say, please watch that out. There will be a large scale, and the attack can come in different places. Right now, they're quite soft, but I think they're refining their strategies. They didn't do it well on the white sort of minority racist support, and that refugee, executive order didn't land well. The Afrikaners, the small group, just rejected it in large part. A few will probably take it up, but by proxy, Israel is fighting a war against South Africa using the United States, and this is very clear. But in a second one, another big scheme is that Trump also probably want to attack the BRICS countries, given the whole talk about the BRICS getting bigger and in having a economic power, but also strengthening more and more.
Hmm.
Trump is probably looking at the weak link.
And
And
it
I
thinks
can
South
tell you,
Africa is the
frankly,
weak.
South Africa is the weak link. I shouldn't be saying this on like
No,
the
go for it. I want you
ambassador.
to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm honest with it. South Africa is quite weak. There's so many vulnerability points that the leaders of the country are not paying attention to. That if they don't, there will be anything can happen to them. And another one, most South Africans haven't paid attention to this. In fact, South Africa is about 1.2 and 2 million square kilometers on land. And at sea, South Africa's got 2.3 million square kilometers of assets, water assets, full of gold and minerals and everything else you want to talk, going all the way down to Antarctica. And so I was playing some scenarios with a good friend of mine because we are futurists and so forth.
Hmm.
And I said, now, President Trump has been talking about Greenland for a while. How about if it turns this around and said, I'm going to be taking South Africa's portion of Antarctica?
That'd be hard to do. Like the
Aha.
argument that Trump makes for Greenland is effectively we are in a multipolar world, and because we're in a multipolar world, we need Fortress America. And we have other countries that have aligned against us, BRICS nations, for example. And so we
Yeah.
need the Panama Canal, we need Canada, we need Greenland, we
But
need these
but
things for us to be.
in fact, Jamal, Antarctica has got more than Greenland, and very little has been talked about. And South Africans, or at least South African leaders, haven't thought about it. There's no anticipatory approach to say, what if that happens? What do we do? Can
Right.
Trump invade it? Can South Africa do anything? I mean, the moral hide is okay, but when it will come to hard power, brutal power, if President Trump and the Americans want to take over the Antarctica part of South Africa, what is South Africa going to do?
Oh, Kofi, we're
But
the fact
you
that,
heard it here. You heard it here first on your show.
well,
Tell your
I'm just saying the
audience.
fact that you would broach that, it gets across the world that we're in now. Like
Yes,
5 years ago, this was never be a conversation. Nobody would ever say would
exactly,
Donald Trump invade South Africa. The
exactly.
world that we're in today, with the US continuously going with the refrain of we're going to take Canada. Canada's going to be the 51st state. We're going to take Canada. Hey, we need to get our hands on Greenland. We're going to get Greenland. I don't care what they think. We're going to get Greenland.
Yeah,
That is a different world. Like that is a weird space to be in when it's like, what if America decides to take something? Here's the thing, with the exception of Russia and China, we can take whatever we want.
yes,
Like in a hard
yes,
military sense, we have the
yeah.
military to knock over any
Mhm.
random government, Europe, Africa, otherwise. Now, would he do it? I don't buy the fact that he would do it or even broach it. I think he's broaching Canada and Panama and Greenland for specific reasons. That's what I mean when I'm saying I don't think he would broach even go there. I mean, the American public would be like, okay, this is ridiculous. Why is Donald Trump trying to take South Africa? Like in their minds, Africa is so far away. It's like, why is he doing that? It makes no sense.
Yeah.
I don't even
But,
think.
but you see, Jamal, he will attempt to make sense. He's got this very clever ways with his team to just make statement without explanation. Okay, we're
Oh
taking
man,
over, Canada with Trudeau is the governor, and
yeah,
people
the
believe
governor.
that kind of thing, you know.
The
And so the next time he'll attack President Ramaphosa for being a corrupt leader, and people say, "Yeah, no, that's true. It's in Africa. He must be a corrupt leader," and that's going to happen. And then step by step, they're going to start rolling those balls of snow and making it bigger enough to give them room to say, hey, by the way, apparently Antarctica is a place where there's a lot more for us and we can get it easily for free. Nobody's going to stop us.
Oh, I'm super skeptical, Kofi. I hope you're wrong. I'm super
I
skeptical.
know, but remember, my job is to put what I call what ifs and then
Fair
start to
enough.
think about them. There's so many what ifs that could happen. I mean, that was the money from USA, PEPFAR, that was just frozen. That was a what if. And suddenly people are in trouble. They're now thinking about different ways. But I must tell you, what is happening now with the pressure on South Africa by the United States is bringing people together. Of course, you have a minority of white people who still they think, they still think, in fact, they're more connected to the US than their own country where they live, which is extraordinary to see that. Many of
Yeah.
them have double nationalities or triple passport and so forth, and they can just split out in, in a second without thinking about to say, well, leave those black people sort themselves out.
We'll see. We'll see. I am super skeptical. Look, like you said, your job is the question of what ifs, and Donald Trump is
Right.
unpredictable, very
That's right.
unpredictable. Nobody would have
Mhm.
expected Trump to come in saying we want Canada, right? That was not something that was discussed during the election at all. So,
Yeah.
so pressure on South Africa. Yes, I understand U.S. aid. I understand this lever. I suspect you're right about the Israel angle, that this is revenge for them taking them to the International Criminal Court and getting an arrest warrant for Netanyahu and Gallant. I would imagine that is humiliating for Gallant and Netanyahu. Trump and Netanyahu are very close. So I'm not shocked that this angle is being open against South Africa. I guess the question is, what is the next shoe to drop in Donald Trump's attacks on South Africa in this sense? It's just there's a racial motivation to this, I feel. Like the reason, and again, it may be me adding Musk into it and the other people into it. I agree with you 1,000% with Israel. Yeah, fascinating. Kofi, man, you know this stuff. You are on the ball with it. One last thing: are there any other issues that we should be aware of taking place on the African continent right now? as they bubble up?
Well, there are plenty of other stuff, but I think the Eastern Congo DRC crisis is very important. And the UN has been making all kinds of noises against the protagonists of this fight with the movement of 23 groups of rebels there who captured Bukavu and Goma, and they're pillaging. But they seem to have some very serious point they're making about, they wanted some kind of sovereignty. The country is almost disabled, dysfunctional presidency. I mean, did you know that the president of the DRC is making $2 million a month?
Is he?
I
That is a
mean, think
very
about
poor
that.
country for that president to be making that much money.
In fact, it's not a poor country. It's a wealthy country, but badly run. There's
Yeah.
so much there. I mean, Congo, I took a plane from Kinshasa, from the western side of the Africa, the south there, all the way to Goma, where I was doing some training. It's an unbelievable sight to see green everywhere. I mean, things grow everywhere. But in any case, I wanted to make sure that that crisis is serious. And I think there's a toss-up now between President Tshisekedi of the DRC and then President Paul Kagame. This is something to watch. People are now very angry at Paul Kagame. It's really strange. Things are turning against him now. Belgium is just sanctioning him. There's, I think, another country, but the European Union is finding ways to sanction him. And so we've never seen President Paul Kagame under such pressure. So there's something that's about to give. We need to watch out for that.
What do you think is about to give? Do you think they're about to find some kind of settlement in the conflict?
Not now, because I mean, the Congo, the DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo itself, it's so badly managed that they don't even have the military necessary to defend that part of the country. It's a very important asset because that's where most of the minerals are.
Yeah.
And so if they can't defend it, how are they going to be able to run a country? Probably. People are worried that there may be a sort of secession between the eastern part and the rest of the DRC, but many of us don't want to see that happen as it happened to Sudan. Remember, that Sudan was split in half, the problem still remained. So it's about the quality of the leadership in Africa. Until that's sorted out, peace will be difficult to find.
Why is that so hard? I mean, look, and I'm not saying this from a position of being in a country where it's competent leadership. So that's where I'm coming from. You should see the polling here on the political parties in the media. It is like in the
That's
12th.
right.
So that's not where I'm coming from. And so maybe this question is stupid because I'm saying it from a position where I already accept that our own leadership is not that great. It's just, as you point out, it's a very wealthy country in resources, but that resource wealth is not translated into hard wealth in, let's say, like a European capital where they build these huge buildings and these beautiful streets and everything else. I guess my thing is, even as dysfunctional as the US is, we still are dysfunctional to a point where we still can function, if that makes sense. And I guess what I'm trying to get at is why, and maybe this is a stupid question, because I guess.
Well, no, it's not a stupid question. I mean, it's a great question. It's been the question. This is the question.
But I feel like a hypocrite asking it. That's what's a stupid question.
We know the answer by now. And the answer is simple. The forces that are keeping the business of dysfunctionality going are much more powerful than those who want peace and then redistributing the wealth and making sure people live in peace. This is as simple as I can summarize it. And out of those forces, there are Africans themselves, house niggers, who are playing to that crowd and then maintaining that kind of status quo. And there's also what we call the the beggar bull syndrome, where the same leaders who've been there for a long time have their masters outside, especially foreign forces, to whom they have to now pay some kind of tribute. And that's how they're living. It's a form of gangsterism.
Yeah.
And it's still so powerful that it overpowers people who are trying to do good. And I think that's the simple answer. But there's a lot more complication. But this is the best way I can summarize this for you.
No, you nailed it. And I think the same thing is true here too. I mean, it may not be beggar bowl in the sense of here, but corruption. Oh man,
Yeah,
like it kills any sort of real political process. That
yeah.
I would,
I try to couch the term corruption and beggar because
yeah,
that's the same thing.
yeah.
They'll corrupt leaders who are just there and then do damage to Africa.
Koffi Kouakou. He is an African analyst, senior research fellow at the Center for Africa-China Studies in the University of Johannesburg. Kofi, man, you are always welcome here. Thank you for this. I really appreciate you joining
Thanks
me.
for the invitation, Jamal, and looking forward to talking to you again. Cheers.
You have a good one. Be safe. Love talking to Kofi.